Former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan called education the great equalizer of our time. He said it gives hope to the hopeless and creates chances for those without. Our first guest, Elisa Guerra, has been dubbed the best educator in Latin America by the Inter-American Development Bank. She's made it her life's work to assist others in assessing a better education and a more promising future.
Unsatisfied with the quality of accessible education in her native Mexico, educator and author Guerra decided to do something about it. So she founded in 2004 an evolving and modernized take on schooling. Among the students she impacted and helped shape were her own children, who have gone on to be educators as well. Her network of academies has grown. It now spans 9 campuses in 3 Latin American countries. She's also produced more than 24 publications that have been used in schools across the Americas. She's a member of UNESCO's International Commission for the Futures of Education. In that role, she travels the world giving lectures on how we can improve the way we teach the next generation.
So you call yourself the accidental teacher. Explain.
It was never my intention to become a teacher. I first became a mother, and then I began teaching my children at home in my living room, bare feet, with books and all the things that you have at home, but not really like a special teaching program or anything. And by the time my children were old enough to go to school, I was not able to find the kind of school that I had envisioned for them, the kind of education that I had in mind for them. And I was very naive, of course, and kind of adventurous, so I decided to create the school that I wanted for my children. So that's how I came into teaching. But then I decided to stay. So the discovery of the passion was the accident, but the decision to stay, that was a choice.
But it's so hard to have something up here and really make it real. There must have been some difficulties along the way.
Oh, yes, of course. Well, teaching my children, it was just pure joy. It was a wonderful experience. To this day, my children and I are very close. But once I took this to the school to try to teach other children, well, I started with a small group, 17 kids, ages 1 to 3. And on the first day, they were all crying, of course, because they were missing their moms. And I didn't know how to tend to them. My arms were full of children crying all the time. I was crying all along with them. So I was not able at that first moment to get them to be nice and relaxed, much less to teach them anything. I thought that I was a fraud, that I was not meant to be a teacher. And I almost quit on that first week. I was this close to quitting on that first week.
Well, you're not a fraud, because in 2015 you won the award for Best Educator in Latin America, which must have been a wonderful honor. Describe for me what that feeling was like to, that you're doing something, you're connecting with these kids, but to actually have somebody say, no, you're one of the finest out there.
That was amazing. The first and maybe most important recognition came from the mothers, from the families. When they said that their kids were happy, that they were learning, that they were happy, and that they were motivated to do other things at home, as I had done with my kids, that made me very happy. But of course, when someone like the IDB comes along and gives you this award, well, it was just fantastic.
According to the UN, more than 55% of children worldwide lack minimum proficiency in math and reading. Those skills are vital to improving quality of life as they grow up. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control says the first 8 years of life are critical to learning. That's when the brain is developing, so it's a crucial time when the mind constructs its learning patterns and abilities.
There's a quote of yours, and I just love it. And I'm going to read it to you, and I want you to kind of expand on it. We see learning as a privilege, as a great gift for the child, which is very different from the more traditional view of learning as a child's job, or even as an obligation. That's a really important distinction, isn't it?
Yes, I remember when I was a child, I used to hear from my parents, and of course these were well-meaning words. You need to do well in school because that's your only job, that's your only obligation. And you grow with this connotation of schooling and learning as something negative, something that hurts, something that is a burden. And that kind of robs the joy out of it. But learning, I believe, is the most creative and exhilarating adventure of life. And we keep learning all along, long after we leave schools. But if we have that adverse connotation, it makes just difficult, and we don't want to do it because we feel it or we experience it as a negative experience. So yes, also because I am an advocate for early childhood education, and I am especially a strong advocate for early reading. And there are people out there that think that early reading robs the child of the time to play, for example. And I believe that both can coexist. One thing does not imply that the other cannot happen at the same time. Of course, if we can do it in a joyous and respectful way, there's never too young an age to create a reader.
So give me a sense, how do you see the traditional model, and how do you see your model differing from it? And what was that like to say, I don't think this works, I'm going to try this?
Well, at the beginning, I had no training, no formal training as a teacher. I was just a mom. I was a college dropout. I had no formal education of my own. I read a lot about childhood development, and I found some books about early reading and how children are born with this rage and enthusiastic desire, burning desire for learning, and how many times schooling just takes that away from them. And when I began looking for a school for my children, I could see that even though they were beautiful schools with great teachers, caring environments, the program, the learning program itself, in my belief, it was outdated and it was way too mediocre, if you forgive me from saying that. Because by that time I knew that children were much more capable of what we have been growing up to think. So the first thing that we did was to enrich the curricula as much as we could, always in a very respectful manner, and make it engaging for the children. So on a particular day, they will start to learn the violin as young as 3. They learned several languages, at least 3 at school. They also explore the great art masterpieces and also the masterpieces of classical music. And we also explore different cultures. Every month we choose a different culture from around the world. So we just want to make our children to be global citizens. And for me, that comes to one phrase. I believe that education should raise our children to be, at the same time, highly capable, but also profoundly human.
You know what I find really interesting about this is, I remember my wife teaching our niece Spanish. She was like 2, and she was picking up like this. And one of the things you think about when they're that young, they really are sponges. I mean, it's so elastic. They can take in so much, and yet we postpone a lot of that.
We wait until the age of 6, when most of the brain's plasticity is not gone, but almost gone. And then we start education. And we believe that education, we believe that, for example, reading, we treat reading as if it was a school subject, and reading is not a school subject. Reading is a brain function, just as language is a brain function. And all children are linguistic geniuses. If we give them the opportunities and the stimulation that they crave and deserve, they can become very fluent speakers of many different languages because their brain is wired for that.
Algebra, too, at a very young age. Talk to us about that.
Well, Isn't it infuriating how a $5 calculator piece of plastic can do very advanced mathematics, and the brain can't, or we think we can't do that? Well, we cannot, we have not converted our children into little calculators or anything, but we also believe that we have been teaching math in a way that it's not significant for children. We teach children, in the traditional way, we teach them the abstraction first. We teach them number 5, number 3, number 2, but those are symbols. That's not the reality behind the numbers. So we start by teaching them the reality, which is the concept of quantity, with cards, with the dots, with red dots. So we teach, for example, if we say 5, the card has 5 dots. If we say 10, the card has 10 dots. And we go all over to 100. So they grasp the concept of quantity. We do that when they are like 2 or 3 years old. After we do that, when we're done with that, then we start teaching the abstractions. But kids grasp the concept much easier when they have all this background knowledge. And then we can go to more advanced math, like algebra.
It's estimated by the United Nations that some 387 million children in that critical age bracket are missing out on the type of education they need to join the future workforce.
One of the things I think about when I think about what you did is that you start a school, you're the teacher, you're the guidance counselor, you're the principal, but you're still a mom. So talk to me about how did you do all of that? Were there enough hours in the day?
Well, you wear many hats, yes, of course, but it's your project, it's your baby. So you need to mother your baby as well. So you do what it takes to raise your baby, which is, in this case, the little school that I founded.
And your kids, do you ever sit down and talk to them about this now, about, what are their observations?
They are all grown up right now. They finished school a long time ago. It's heartwarming to me to know that they have good memories about their times in school. Because, they were the first students to arrive and the last ones to leave. The school was like their second home because I was there also working. So they grew up literally in the school. The school was an extension of their home. And that's kind of endearing to me.
Education is also a powerful tool in reducing poverty. In Latin America, it was reduced from 45% to 25% between 2000 and 2014. Experts believe an advancement in regional education was a key factor in lowering the poverty numbers. It is through schools like Guerra's that children from underprivileged areas and homes can have access to private levels of education.
You started out with your school, your approach, but it's flourished, and you now have franchises. Can you explain that whole process, how that began?
Well, yes. When I began teaching my own children, I did it. I read many books, but one that was very fundamental was Glenn Doman's How to Teach Your Baby to Read, and later on, How to Multiply Your Baby's Intelligence. So I began to learn a lot about that philosophy. I contacted them, I took courses, and then I began to work with them as a volunteer. They do work with brain-injured children. So I began to collaborate with them as a translator. Later on, I became part of the clinical staff as well. And at the same time, the school was growing, the results were becoming evident, and the first other school, beside my own school, came from a mom that she had her son with us, and then they had to leave. The family moved to another city. And this mom was a teacher, and she said, you know what, I just loved your school. My son was very happy in your school. I want to have that in the other city that I am going to. And I said, I don't have the resources, I don't have the time, I cannot have two schools. I mean, my time is already devoted to this school. And she said, let's find a way to make it work. So the way that we found it is that every school is independent, but we all share the same philosophy. I train the teachers, and we go along with the school, mentoring them. But this is not, you say franchise, and of course that's the model, but it's not like a fast food restaurant,
right.
Of course, because every school has its own personality. Every school is a living ecosystem. So we have the same, we are part of the family, we have the same blood, but you will see in different siblings, different faces, even though they are part of the same family.
Your schools are private, but you do work with low-income families, don't you? Can you explain how that works?
Yes, I've been involved in several projects with disadvantaged families. The one that I am working right now, I am very enthusiastic about it. It's a program with the government of the state of Nuevo León in my home country, which is Mexico. The name of the program is Cuidados. And I think that this is brilliant, what they have in mind. You know, when children from disadvantaged families reach school, at school age, at 6, they are already behind, maybe by 2 years, if you compare them with children that come from more advantaged households. And many times, this gap is very difficult to close. So it's something that they are going to be, it's a burden they are going to be carrying for the rest of their schooling. That's not fair. I mean, you are in the first day of school, you are 6 years old, and you're already behind. So what happens in the school, in the home, in the early years, it's very important. What we want to do is to prevent that learning gap from happening in the first place. So what we're doing right now is we are training the parents to teach them to read at home, beginning at age 2, 3, and 4. And also, the reading program is also a language development program, and we also teach them how to do a good physical program, because it's very well related to the academic achievement as well. You know, movement and being able to crawl and creep and run and oxygenate the brain. So many times we restrain the children from moving, and of course that's also detrimental for brain development. So I am very excited about this project, because if it is successful, we will begin to finally tackle this problem of inequality by preventing it in the first place.
According to American nonprofit Habitat for Humanity, 69% of children from low-income countries will not learn the critical skills they will need to succeed in the workforce of the future, while more than 70% of those from high GDP nations will. This imbalance threatens to further increase the income inequality we see between developed and developing nations.
Let me ask one final question, which is, I can tell, talking to you, the energy you have about this and the passion you have about this and the excitement, and that you see results and you're excited about that. But one listening to this could say, wow, this is really, really cool what she's doing. But it's like a pebble in the ocean. For every great school that you're talking about, there are a million that are really messed up that have the same formula that you were describing earlier. What needs to happen for a transformation where we can actually start to see these types of schools flourishing elsewhere?
Well, first, I don't really believe that this will happen from the top down. I think this needs to be grassroots projects. And I'm humbled that you think that the project is nice and it's being successful. I believe so. But there are many others, different from mine. There is a teacher doing wonderful things for climate change, for climate education in Belgium, and also helping students from the Kakuma refugee camp, my good friend Cohen Timmers. And like his story, I know of many other stories. So where I place my hope is in passionate teachers, passionate parents, that we believe that even if we make a little change, it is worthwhile. And maybe while we are doing that little change, some others can come along and maybe it will get bigger and bigger, little by little. That's my hope that can happen.
Well, the pebble, when it hits the ocean, ripples. So let's hope that's the case. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. It was nice being here.